Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk about developing new raspberries. Wendy and I head up the Puyallup program, and we work cooperatively with the BC and the Oregon programs, and also some with Bob Martin also in the virology side of things. The goals, they haven't changed a whole lot from year to year. We want machine harvestable raspberries. We want some that have high yields. We want root rot tolerance. And then, of course, the flavor and all the other fruit qualities. Talk about 2166. The cross was made in 2007. So the seedlings were planted in 2008, and they were planted at Sakuma Brothers, and they were machine harvested there. And the selection was made in 2010 as I was riding the machine. So it machine harvested, looked very good machine harvesting then, and it has since then. So it's planted with a cooperating grower. It was Randy Honkoop in this case, in 2011, and evaluated in 2013 and 14. And it looked good in 2013. And so we put it into another machine harvesting trial in 2014. And we also had it go into grower trials in 2014 also. So we've moved things along as quickly as we can in this case. And this is machine harvested yields from one of the cooperating growers. This were based on 8 plant plots. It was planted in 2014. And Cascade Harvest had the highest yield. The 2-year total was 16.8 tons per acre for the 2 years. But 2166 wasn't too far behind, and it was just a little bit ahead of Meeker and ahead of Willamette. So it had good yields. And we also analyzed the fruit quality on this, and the characteristics for 2166 were very similar to Willamette for soluble solids, for pH, titratable acidity, and similar to Meeker for the fruit color, the amount of anthocyanins. So it hits into the commercial raspberry properties. There were 4 selections that were in the 2014 grower trial. These pictures were all taken on one farm, which had a very high level of root rot, and so it's a good field to have a planting on, so you find out which ones are more tolerant than others. 1980 did not survive very well, and also when it does get bushy dwarf, it goes very, very crumbly. 2122 didn't really grow very well on this site. 2188 had several spots where there was quite a bit of root rot. These pictures were all taken 2 years after planting, so it moved in quickly. 2166 didn't show any symptoms. In 2016, there was a very few plants, maybe 2 to 4 plants in the row that had some root rot symptoms in 2017. But 2017 was a rather rough year for root rot. We have plots at Puyallup which are very, very infested with Phytophthora, and when I compared it with other cultivars, 2166 had more resistant, ranked better for it. It was number 6 out of 32 different clones that we had in there. So it was in the top 20% for tolerance, and better than Meeker, Cascade Harvest, Lewis, or Vintage. That we, as I said, we had very wet spring and fall, and previous winter, and we had places that were standing water that haven't had it before. So this may be a bit of an extreme, and you can see all the numbers dropped. So these are pictures from one of the grower trials. You can see it's a vigorous plant, fairly long laterals, but they seem to be attached fairly well. large fruit, comes off very, very easily. And then just in summary, machine harvests very easily. It's an early season. The midpoint of harvest is exactly the same as Willamette. It's more resistant to root rot than Meeker or Cascade Harvest. Similar soluble solids, pH, and titratable acidity as Willamette. And then similar anthocyanins as Meeker. And it's firmer than Cascade Harvest, Meeker, or Willamette. So here's a picture of it. And the proposed name is Cascade Premier. All the paperwork hasn't been done on stuff yet, but that's what I'm recommending, and I imagine that's what it will wind up. Okay, summary on this. The grower trials, 2014, 2166, we're going to release. 2188 is one that has, the fruit looks very similar to Cascade Premier, but it does seem to be more sensitive to root rot, so we're not sure if we're going to release it, probably not. 1914, one that has the same parents is 1912, and it stood up very, very well to root rot, but we'll see how this does. It was just planted this year. 2010 is one that's a bit, it's a darker berry, so that may be of interest for some of the producers. 2162 is probably going to look very similar to 2166 and 2188. And 1962 is one that also is very dark and it's round, more like a traditional raspberry rather than the long elongated ones we've had. 2068 and 2069 have been in a number of trials, and particularly 2069 usually winds up as being either the top or very, very close to the top for yield, just about every planting. Okay, I'm going to move on, just a summary of what the plant sales have been this last year. They dropped. The plant sales for Oregon, Washington, BC combined were about 35% less than the previous year. Not quite sure what happened there, but that's what the sales are. And in Washington, which is the orange line, it took a sizable drop in percentage again. We'll see what happens in the future. Total plant sales, the top four are Meeker, Wakefield, Chemainus, and Cascade Harvest. And Meeker's the dominant one again this year. And however, if you look at it by each state or province, in Oregon, Cascade Harvest this year was the higher one, although there's not a whole lot of plants being sold there. There was just a bit over 35,000 plants, so that's pretty low. Washington, Meeker, it mirrors the overall trends. And then for BC, Meeker's the number one, then Chemainus, and then Wakefield, and then Cascade Harvest. So I think that's about it. I want to thank the nurseries for being so willing to provide that data for us. It makes it possible to follow what the trends are. So with that, any questions?
Any questions for Pat? You are a quiet group this afternoon. Should we take a coffee break and come back? Okay, we will in a little bit.
Okay.